The time is now 20 to 1 in the morning here in Dublin, in Ireland, and it's about 6 hours earlier on the east coast of the United States. What is emerging and emerging quickly, irrespective of what might be being said in the mainstream media, particularly the execrable mainstream media here in Ireland, is that it is becoming, as every hour goes past, clearer and clearer and clearer that if Joe Biden and those behind him, including Kamala Harris, want to do the right thing, then Biden should concede the presidential election race immediately. There are a number of reasons for this, not least of which is the fact that there is a growing degree of concern about the nature of how votes were cast and counted. But that could go into very considerable detail. There is a somewhat bigger picture here, and that is that Donald Trump, in his capacity both as president and as candidate, has succeeded with capturing a perception of the reality of there being very serious, widespread, chronic concerns about how this election was conducted. That is not to suggest that Trump is a liar. It is to suggest that Trump is not a liar, but through many other things, including his own tenacity and his own strength of character, he has made a large part of the United States and other international populations focus on the fact that there is indeed something deeply amiss here. In those circumstances, for Joe Biden to be continuing with this, with what is becoming an increasingly grotesque masquerade, is unbecoming. And what Biden is doing is increasingly proving his unsuitability for the office of US President. He had done that indisputably before this election took place. But the mainstream media promoted him relentlessly. And indeed, after these few weeks, there will be very serious questions to ask about the conduct of the mainstream media in the short, medium and long term, both how they behaved and how we expect them to behave from now on. The situation now, from a European context, is similar to VE Day in 1945, when the Second World War came to an end. Europe was never the same again. It hasn't been. And the present map of Europe and the present structures of Europe were determined primarily by the outcome of the Second World War. The borders of modern Germany, the borders of modern Poland were determined directly by the outcome of the Second World War. Indeed, modern Poland isn't even in the footprint that it was in 1939. It is much further eastward in 1939. Modern Poland is in fact what could have been called pre-1945 Germany. Poland moved westward by at least 1/3. That's a conservative guess. So this makes the point that the end of the Second World War in Europe was cataclysmic, and people were looking around and wondering what had happened. It's not too much of an exaggeration, if any exaggeration at all, to say that what's happening around the US presidential election is of major global significance. Now, lots of people all over the world love to comment on United States presidential elections. There's no harm in that. But this is different, and this is a lot bigger. Because this really, more than COVID-19, more than any of the other things that have been going on in the past 2 years, climate change and all those other things, this really was the psychopath's last roll of the dice. From the outset of voting last week, it became very, very clear that there was something very untoward taking place. What that something was, it's almost impossible to tell. But the reality is that if Joe Biden has any concern, or those behind him have any genuine concern for the well-being of the United States and the preservation of the Republic, then they need to do the right thing. And the right thing isn't what they or the supporters or the mainstream media may necessarily be still in an increasingly forlorn way promoting. The right thing is to throw it in now. Not 6 hours from now, or 12 hours from now, or 12 days from now, but to throw it in now. That would be probably the most principled thing Biden has done in his political career. And people have a memory of how Al Gore behaved when he lost his Supreme Court battle in 2000. He behaved with, although I would not have personally been a supporter of Gore, he behaved with an incredible dignity that I found quite sad. In the best sense. I respected Gore's response to the 2000 election. He handled himself with great dignity and great statesmanship. This is Biden's chance to do the same.